At 2 a.m. on January 3, 2026, the sky over Caracas filled with the sound of rotors. 150 U.S. military aircraft swept low over the mountains, carrying special forces directly toward the Miraflores Palace. By dawn, the incumbent Venezuelan president, Nicolás Maduro, had been captured and was on a flight to a military base in New York to face federal charges. The White House officially characterized the raid as a targeted law enforcement operation, a military-backed effort to arrest an indicted fugitive on narco-terrorism charges. But hours later, the president made a sharp pivot. He announced the U.S. would now effectively run Venezuela, specifically detailing plans to take up to 50 million barrels of the country's oil and bring American companies in to extract millions more. This marked the active rollout of what strategists call the Doctrine, a hyper-aggressive update to the Monroe Doctrine. It swaps traditional diplomacy for unilateral military force, explicitly aiming to lock down territorial and resource dominance in the Western Hemisphere. Almost immediately, a U.S.-backed interim government took shape under former Vice President Delcy Rodriguez. Her administration moved to dismantle Venezuela's decades-old state energy monopoly by rewriting the National Hydrocarbons Law. The new legal framework stripped the state-owned oil company, PDVSA, of its mandatory leadership role. It permitted foreign private companies to take full operational control, market the oil directly, and keep revenues in offshore accounts. The White House had even briefed top U.S. oil executives weeks before the raid, offering them priority access to the largest proven oil reserves on Earth. Yet the major oil companies balked. Some executives even called the country uninvestable. If the U.S. military just cleared out a hostile regime and installed a legal framework tailor-made for corporate extraction, why are the world's most powerful energy companies refusing to start the engine? The answer lies beneath the surface of the Orinoco Belt. Venezuela holds over 300 billion barrels of crude, but it is not the light, pumpable liquid found in places like Texas. It is extra-heavy, sulfur-rich crude that behaves like dense, sticky sludge. To flow, engineers battle thermodynamics, injecting intense heat and diluents to mobilize the oil. This chart compares break-even prices. Venezuelan crude requires so much energy, it demands a much higher, stable global price to profit than conventional light crude. A special forces raid can seize a presidential palace in a matter of hours, but it cannot alter the physical laws that dictate how heavy hydrocarbons behave. The very composition of the oil makes it incredibly expensive to produce. These reserves function as a volatile economic liability, uniquely vulnerable to even slight drops in global prices. Then there is the machinery required to process it. After 50 years of neglect, underinvestment, and the mass exodus of thousands of qualified engineers, the physical infrastructure is in a state of deep decay. The main pipelines moving oil to the coast haven't been seriously upgraded in half a century and are plagued by severe corrosion and leaks. Furthermore, the specialized pumps required for heavy oil need massive amounts of electricity, but Venezuela's national power grid operates at a severe 30% deficit. Industry analysts estimate it will take a capital injection of $100 to $150 billion, sustained over a decade, just to restore the country's historical production levels. And the companies expected to write those checks are watching the political fallout. The UN Secretary General explicitly warned that the invasion seriously undermined international law. While back in the U.S., congressional committees launched investigations into whether the administration colluded with oil executives before the raid. Foreign investors also carry the deep institutional memory of previous Venezuelan expropriations. They know that regimes installed by foreign militaries lack democratic stability, meaning any billions they invest today could easily be seized by a new government tomorrow. When risk-averse oil executives look at Venezuela, they don't see a jackpot. They see decayed infrastructure wrapped in explosive legal ambiguity. The attempt to forcibly capture this market is already triggering geopolitical shockwaves. Cuba, which relies heavily on subsidized Venezuelan crude to keep its deteriorating power plants running, now faces a total nationwide energy collapse as U.S. blockades cut off their supply. Across the Pacific, China is watching tens of billions of dollars in oil-backed loans freeze. With the U.S. now controlling Venezuelan exports and threatening secondary sanctions, Beijing has no clear path to collect its debt. There is also the immediate environmental threat. If Washington pressures companies to rapidly increase output, forcing highly toxic, sulfur-rich heavy crude through a network of corroded, failing pipelines, it drastically raises the probability of massive oil spills and methane leaks. The fallout shows that attempting to hoard hemispheric resources through abrupt military force destabilizes global markets, rival economies, and fragile ecosystems far beyond the borders of Caracas. The initial tactical victory provided days of headlines, but those optics are fading against the reality of millions of tons of silent metal sitting idle in the South American sun. The aggressive posturing of the Doctrine hit a hard physical limit. A military command can order special forces to take a capital overnight, but it cannot order a pipeline to hold pressure, and it cannot bypass the brutal economics of heavy oil extraction. An armed intervention can successfully seize the sovereign territory of another nation, but extracting its wealth requires the exact things the invasion destroyed: stability, trust, and the rule of law.